So I guess we should start off with Truth or Dare, which is a new horror film from Blumhouse Productions, who are a horror production company. They do things outside of horror. They've done films like Whiplash, for example, outside of horror, a fantastic film. But more recently, they put films out like Get Out, various other ones. They did the Insidious films, they did the Paranormal Activity films, but they have also done, and I think this is something people forget, a lot of shit. Okay, they've put out a lot of shit films. If you Google Blumhouse Productions and you go on their Wikipedia page and you look at the films they've released, you're looking at a handful of great ones, but the rest are pretty shit. So there might be people that had expectations for this one. I am not one of those people. I saw the trailer for this one and it looked like hot garbage. And surprise, surprise, it ended up being hot garbage. But, and here's a stinger, but it was actually so bad it was fun. I had a fun time with this film. The essential premise, if you've not heard about this one, is that there's a group of teens that go to Mexico. They end up going to this abandoned old convent place with some random guy, and they play a game of Truth or Dare. And then once that game's over, the game carries on in real life, and essentially these demon things, apparitions, ask them Truth or Dare, and they have to play the game. If they don't do a Truth or Dare, they get killed, essentially. So we're just following these teenagers trying not to get killed by a game of Truth or Dare. Notice the tone in my voice there. It's It's just as ridiculous as it sounds. Just as ridiculous as it sounds. But yeah, there's many things that I could dive into and swim around in the pool of why the fuck have you made this film. I'm just gonna pick a few out. Firstly, we'll talk about the premise of this one because it's something I've got to talk about. I've seen some people saying, "Oh, it's an interesting premise. It could have been done well," and I'm here to argue against that. I don't think it's an interesting premise. I think it's an utterly ridiculous premise, and I think the thing that's vaguely interesting that might be what people mean when they say that is that there are these, when you're sat around a campfire with your mates, you're getting wasted, and you're asking moral questions like, would you rather save this and have this happen, or would you rather do this and have this happen? And it's kind of like a catch-22 or whatever. You don't win out of them, but it's like the moral questions that you're interested in. I think that's the side that people are interested about, because arguably there are interesting moments like that dotted throughout this film where it could get interesting. What would you rather do in this situation? But not in the film that I watched. Not in the film that I watched. There's nothing interesting about the premise. It's immediately a frustrating and ridiculous premise. But it's a sort of premise which I think you probably could get away with if you had the right tone and style about yourself when you're directing it and writing it, which this film doesn't have. I mean, there's a world where a film like this gets made and it's by someone that has a appreciation of the horror genre, but isn't afraid to admit how ridiculous it is and play with itself in that sense. Oh, that sounded weird. But this film isn't that. It takes itself far too seriously for any of this to work, and it just doesn't work. I mean, there's just so many ridiculous things about this. Why? What is scary about demons asking you Truth or Dare, but they've got this weird smile? I don't know if you've seen a trailer for it, but essentially the demons will just sort of come out of nowhere and real life will be happening, but in your head you're seeing this creepy demon thing it just asks you Truth or Dare, right? And they've got this creepy smile, so you'll be talking to someone, and the film loves doing this thing where it'll position this shot over the shoulder dialogue, and then the camera will pan around so that the head of the person that's being spoken to blocks the camera for a bit, and then it'll turn the other side, and the person they're talking to suddenly got this creepy smile. Firstly, it overuses that way of blending into this to no end. It's in every scene, and it gets boring after the first one. But it's got this ridiculous, creepy smile, which really looks like some little kid got hold of Photoshop on their dad's computer and wanted to make their horribly depressed parents that don't love them look like they love them in Family. That was dark. But that might as well be what happened. That might as well be the inspiration for this film. It looks ridiculous. It never stops looking ridiculous. Arguably, the only points where it stops looking ridiculous is where there are more ridiculous things happening in the film, which isn't a good thing to happen at all. But anyway, the demons look ridiculous, and there's just nothing scary to me. There might be an audience, there probably is an audience of teenagers who watch this, who will get scared by this, but there's nothing scary to me about a demon with a smile coming up to you and asking you truth or dare. And the film puts in these other rules, which, granted, in the world of the film, in the context of the film, I think it's allowed to get away with, but it adds these rules which basically mean that you can't just always ask for truths, or you can't, cheat the system. You've got to play it so that it will guarantee some kind of ridiculous scare at some point. But the dares, which are supposed to be like this, the scarier parts of the film, or at least the bits where the characters' lives are more at risk, the dares in the film are fucking preposterous, genuinely ridiculous. The first one is get your dick out, which, I mean, whatever way you want to look at it, arguably is... No, actually, there's no way. It's fucking stupid. Anyway, he does that. Things happen. And then it sort of gets like darker and it's more twisted. And it's supposed to be like these characters are like, oh, the game's really fucking with us. But it doesn't really. I mean, it does. But there's also dares like walk around the outside of the roof of your house while drinking a bottle of vodka. You have to finish it by the end, otherwise you die. Which, in the moment, I think there's an argument to be made that it adds a bit of excitement to the film and that it's an exciting sequence. But hear me out. It also isn't. And you step out of that sequence, the scene finishes, and you think, why did the demon want her to do this, other than to create this elaborate sequence, which, I don't know, maybe adds some tension to the film? Why didn't the demon just ask her to dare her to shoot herself? Why didn't the demon dare her to jump off the roof if it wanted her to fall off the roof so bad? Instead, it's like walk around the edge of the roof and down a bottle of vodka. Firstly, there's a way to do that without being a fucking ridiculous, tense sequence. You down your bottle of vodka and you walk around the edge of the roof before it has time to kick in. Okay? But this girl, obviously, okay, she's in a heightened state of mind, Some of her friends have died. Maybe she is a bit... But she just walks around crying, and then it's like, oh, there's some spikes underneath. We've got to walk around with a fucking mattress to catch her. And the whole time this sequence was happening, I was like, why is this what this demon wants him to do? Do you ever get that in horror films where a demon is just fucking with a group of people, right? And the whole idea is like, it's meant to be very scary, many intense. But I always end up thinking in bad horror films like that, why is this what the demon's doing with their time? Like, it's kind of like when you watch horror films where the demon's just sort of like in the background of shots and it's appearing in places, and you can't help but wonder, to the demon, it's just stood around in different places, isn't it? It's not really very scary. Why is it doing that with its time? It must be having a very dull day. It's like one day in a film, and to us watching a film, it's a scene, right? Where there's a demon in the background in daytime, and it's like all spooky. But that's all that demon's done that day. It's just woken up and gone, I'm going to stand in the back corner of a room. And that's my day. It must be boring. This film, I couldn't stop thinking, why is the demon doing this? Get a better job. So yeah, it's a fucking preposterous idea. And it's held by terrible performances. I mean, the film's led by Lucy Hale, who I've not really seen in a huge amount before. I have seen her in a couple of episodes of Pretty Little Liars, which, without going too far into that rabbit hole, is one of the worst TV series I've ever watched. She's bad in this film, but, she's going for it, so I'll let her off. But there are some really bad people in this film. Some really unintentionally hilarious dramatic moments because of how bad the acting is and because of how bad the writing is. The two mesh terribly. Because, when this film gets vaguely entertaining, it's held back by, honestly, a truly atrocious script, a truly atrocious screenplay, which I don't even know what they were really thinking. I don't know what the plot of this is meant to be. Because without going into too many spoilers, essentially you get to the end of this film and you realise there's really been no point in this film. other than to explore the dynamic and relationship of these characters. That seems to me, at the end of this film, to be the main crux of the film. But the real problem is, there isn't really any interest in any of these characters or their relationships at all. They just happen because it needs to happen in a situation in the film. Like, there's one character who's gay, and thinking back, it's ridiculous, right? This one character is gay and doesn't want to come out to his parents, and sort of, I guess, his plot in the film is that he is coming out to his parents, and it's so weirdly executed and so half-arsedly whacked into the film. It feels a little bit wrong, you know? Like, he has this, so that it goes through the characters in the film, and they have their moments with this demon that asks them truth or dare, right? And something big will happen. His sets up, and it's like this dead person, like, truth or dare, whatever. And you're like, oh, okay, what's going to happen here? And then it just cuts back to him coming back to his friends, and he's like, the demon made me come out to my dad. And they're all like, oh my God, that's really brave. And he's like, and I think he says the line, it just feels so good to have my truth out. And then the film carries on. And watching this film, having so recently seen a film like Love, Simon, you just watch it and you're like, fuck off. Fuck off, all right? Don't try and pull this bullshit on me. Don't try and put in this sub-storyline of a gay character bravely coming out to his dad. Don't put that in this film. This film doesn't need that. You are hurting the cause you're trying to be a part of here. Fuck off. If I sound angry, it's because this film did anger me. But at the same time, it absolutely flew by for me, and I was entertained by it because it was very, very, very funny. And it didn't at any point attempt to really be very funny at all. It just is. It just is very, very funny. And so things are just happening in this film, and the film thinks it's clever. It thinks it's got this really clever idea, and it thinks it's scary, and it just kind of randomly drops scary things like dead people or an old man randomly into the mix, and characters' relationships are happening, and the entire time I was thinking to myself, fuck, I would rather be at home doing absolutely nothing. You really shouldn't go and waste your money on Truth or Dare, but wait for it to come out the cinema, get a bunch of friends around, get a lot of alcohol, and just get drunk and watch this film. It's the only way to truly appreciate it, because I think there is entertainment to be had here, but not for any of the reasons it thinks it's doing it. It is a really bad film. Right now, baby.